Hello, everyone. My name is George Senis, and today I'm going to be sharing with you the powerful yet unsettling legend of Faust, which comes from my German heritage. It's a story that's been told and retold for centuries across Europe, particularly in Germany, and it explores themes of temptation, ambition, and it's a deep reflection on the dangers of pride and the cost of chasing power without limits. The fantasized version of Faust from our myth is loosely based on Johann Faust, which was a German alchemist, astrologer, and using the term loosely, magician who lived in the early 1500s. He was rumored to have made a pact with the devil in exchange for magical powers and forbidden knowledge, which is where our mythic story kind of takes inspiration from. So in our story, we find Faust, who is a brilliant but dissatisfied scholar, who has studied everything you can imagine, from law and medicine to philosophy and even theology. Yet, at the end of the day, he still finds himself empty. He wants more knowledge, more power, and more pleasure. So, as any sane person does, he decides to summon a demon, Mephistopheles, also known as Mephisto, and sells his soul, essentially, to the devil, Mephistopheles, in exchange for 24 years of unlimited knowledge and indulgence. What follows is essentially Faust using his powers for selfish pleasure and seducing women and performing illusions and manipulating kings. In some versions, he's more philosophical, seeking true meaning of life and art through his experiences, but in most adaptations, he is selfish. But regardless of which version you're reading, the 24-year clock is ticking. So eventually, that 24 years passes, and his time runs out. Depending on the version, once again, later versions are Christianized and he repents and is saved by divine grace. But in the main version, in the version we're talking about, Faust realizes his error, but is too late and is dragged to hell. Faust is torn apart by demons and his remains are found strewn across his room. Moving on to the deeper meaning and symbolism, we see human ambition play a huge role in this story. Faust wants to know everything. He's not content with the things he's learned on Earth, and he has a wide portfolio of, things he's learned. He's looked into law, theology. He's a great mind, but he isn't content with this. He wants to be godlike in his wisdom and control over things. Temptation, as with most stories with the devil, is a huge thing in this story, but it doesn't come in the form of the normal, horned devil with fire and brimstone. In some of the artwork we see, he's portrayed like that just because that's our more, modern version of the devil. So when people think of that, that's how they portray him. But he appears as Mephistopheles, as a suave, witty, force that is offering Faust all of his desires. And it is temptation. It seduces Faust, and Faust sells his soul. And this idea of the soul, in many ways, the soul is something that represents humanity. It's the thing that differentiates us. In myths, usually from animals or monsters or demons. It's this intrinsic thing that humans have, and by giving this up, it means losing everything that makes him human. The story again and again warns against pride, which is something that not only in Christian but all classical traditions is seen as one of the deadliest sins, because it seduces us and makes us think that we can surpass, the natural and divine limits. And because of this, it always ends with us losing everything when we try to, conquer the divine. Looking at just my own ancestry, and while I didn't hear this story growing up, I think the story circulates enough that its themes are ever present, and especially growing up in a Christian household, I knew of the ideas of, selling your soul to the devil and being wary of pride and how that can lead to overreaching ambition that can lead to downfall. But I think also the core of Faust and his love for knowledge and philosophical questions was always around my home. And I come from a family that all search for higher education. So we like these questions, and I like to talk about philosophical things. But also, I was taught a belief in moral consequence, that the choices we make matter. Even if the reward is high, there is a groundedness in knowledge that comes with responsibility and humility, and a belief that knowledge should be used for the betterment of mankind rather than personal gain. On the personal side of things, which is obviously connected to values and ancestry, while I'm not trying to summon demons, obviously, I do relate to Faust's desire for more knowledge and more experiences and a better understanding of life. I think as a young person, and specifically as a student who's, trying to figure out their future, I question things like, how far would I go to make my dreams come true? And would I have to compromise my values for success? Would I be willing to do that? And this story, I think, serves as a great reminder that we should keep striving for knowledge, but it should never come at the cost of your soul. And in modern terms, that might mean not working yourself so hard that you skimp out on your family life, or don't pursue something to the point that you forget what's important to you, no matter what that is. I think just beyond my own personal connections, I think there are universal lessons that specifically today speaks to our culture. We live in a world that's obsessed with success and fame and wealth, and terms like hustle culture or, alpha gets thrown around, and we sometimes praise billionaires, people who at all costs, using the term sell your soul to the devil, they forget, who they are and lose a little bit of this humanity. And I think Faust's story shows us and reminds us that when you make a deal with the devil, or, in real life, make shortcuts and compromises to get power, it always comes with a price. Whether it's your soul or something else, there's always downsides to that. This legend is a very enduring one, especially in Western culture. Like I said, I have a feeling you've heard some version of this story, whether it's, this original telling or even something like Limitless could be seen as a modern interpretation. Or on the past two slides, I've used examples from comic books. Marvel Comics uses the character Mephisto, and he acts the same way. He's the devil. He offers you some great deal or some fix for your life, but there's always that darker, side of the coin, that you get something great, but it comes at a cost, and the cost is never worth the thing that you get. I think we should always be thinking about that when we take shortcuts towards success and we fall victim to temptation. So I want to thank you for listening, and if someone ever offers you everything you've ever wanted, you should probably read the fine print first.